He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Friedrich Nietzsche. I met a man once. He worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen. 12-hour shifts, sometimes 14, 6 days a week, never called in sick, never complained. He worked in a steel factory on the edge of town. His hands were like leather, his back permanently bent. When he smiled, his teeth were stained with years of coffee and fatigue. But he still smiled. One night, over a cheap whiskey, he told me something that chilled me to my bones. I gave this company 30 years of my life, Elias. You know what I got when I retired? He laughed. A plaque and a handshake. That's it. And then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Don't let them trick you. Hard work isn't holy. It's just heavy." That night, I couldn't sleep because something deep inside me knew he wasn't bitter. He was awake. We are taught from a young age that hard work always pays off. That if you sacrifice, stay obedient, keep your head down and do the right thing, the universe will reward you. But look around. Who are the richest people you know? Who are the ones shaping the world? Are they the janitors, the nurses, the bricklayers, the bus drivers, or are they the ones who sit in glass towers, moving money between screens, posting videos that sell dreams, building wealth from stories? We live in a world where a TikTok coach earns more in a day than a firefighter earns in a month, where a man risking his life in a mine is paid less than someone designing an app to track how many steps you take. Does that make sense to you? No? That's because it was never meant to. This belief in moral labor, that working hard is inherently noble, that suffering is virtuous, that obedience leads to reward, this belief is not natural. It was engineered, and one man saw it more clearly than most. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche called it slave morality, a system of values created not by the strong but by the powerless. Let me explain. Once upon a time in the ancient world, power was obvious. The strong ruled. They didn't apologize for it. The kings, the warriors, the conquerors, they decided what was good. Good was whatever made them stronger, freer, more alive. That was master morality. But the weak, they couldn't win through strength. So they did something else. They changed the rules. They said, being humble, that's good. Being poor, that's virtuous. Being obedient, quiet, self-sacrificing, that's holy. Why? Because those were the only tools they had. And over centuries, this thinking seeped into our cultures, our religions, our families, our hearts. So now we praise the man who gives everything and asks for nothing. We glorify the worker who stays late and never complains. We admire the mother who breaks herself for everyone else and never once rests. But let me ask you something. Who actually benefits from that thinking? You? Or the people who keep you working just hard enough to be exhausted, just loyal enough not to leave, just hopeful enough not to revolt? You see, this isn't just about money. It's about a system, a deeply rooted psychological system that rewards not virtue, but leverage. The ones who rise are not always the kindest or the most diligent or the most moral. They're often the ones who understood the game was rigged and decided to stop playing by the old rules. And if that thought stings, good. It should. Because if you're watching this and you've ever wondered, why am I working this hard and still getting nowhere? Then you're not lazy. You're just waking up. And that's the first step. So stay with me, because what we're about to uncover next will change the way you see work, power, and your place in this world. If this resonates with you so far, subscribe to the channel. Not because I said something cool, but because what's coming next, you won't want to miss. They say the meek shall inherit the earth. But I've watched the meek die with nothing in their hands but hope. Hope doesn't feed your children. Hope doesn't pay your rent. Hope doesn't get you out of that job that's slowly breaking your body. And yet, from every pulpit, every podium, every social media guru, they whisper the same message. Work hard, be patient, be good. Your reward is coming. But I want to ask you something deeply uncomfortable. What if that promise was never meant to be kept? Let me tell you a story. It's ancient. Sacred even, but it hides a truth that few dare to face. Long ago in the deserts of Egypt, there were slaves, thousands of them, Israelites, forced to labor under Pharaoh's rule. They built cities, monuments, the Great Pyramids, working from dawn till dusk under the whip of empire. Now think about that. They did the hardest work imaginable, back-breaking, soul-crushing labor. They built wonders of the world, but couldn't own a grain of the land they walked on. Why? Because work without power is just servitude. It was only when they left the system, crossed the Red Sea, walked into the unknown, that they had a chance at freedom. And even then, it took 40 years in the wilderness to unlearn the slave mentality. They had to forget how to be obedient before they could learn how to be free. Sound familiar? Some of you are working under pharaohs and don't even know it. Now, I want to take you further. Let's go east. In ancient India, there's a parable in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, a warrior, stands on the battlefield, paralyzed. He doesn't want to fight, doesn't want to kill. He wants to be moral. But Krishna, the divine charioteer, tells him, to not act is also an action. To refuse to fight the battle you were born for, that is the greatest sin. You see, morality without context is dangerous. Sometimes what you think is virtue is just fear dressed in nice clothing. Arjuna had to learn that being good isn't the same as being right. Just like you have to learn that being a good worker doesn't mean you'll be rewarded. Sometimes it means you'll be used and discarded. Now, if you're still watching this, I know something about you. You're not here to be entertained. You're here because something inside you has begun to question everything. You've seen too many people break themselves for jobs that never loved them. You've watched your parents burn out in silence. You've seen the wealthy flaunt ease while the grinders drown in debt. And you've started to wonder, what if the world doesn't work the way they told us it does? Nietzsche believed that most people are trapped in a moral illusion. They believe goodness lies in sacrifice, humility, and suffering. And where does that belief come from? From the early Christian ideal of the suffering servant, from the image of Jesus nailed to a cross, not as a ruler, but as a martyr. But here's the twist. Even Christ in his last moments cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Because even the most obedient servant of God was abandoned. That should tell you something. Virtue doesn't guarantee rescue. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee reward. Pain does not equal progress. So what do? Do we throw away morality? Do we become selfish monsters, crushing others to climb higher? No, that's not what Nietzsche meant, and it's not what I'm saying. What we need is not less morality, but a new morality, one that doesn't glorify weakness, one that doesn't chain us to thankless labor, one that teaches us to love but not lose ourselves in service to those who do not love us back. Let me tell you a story from the streets of Detroit. A woman named Ava, single mom, 2 kids. She worked 3 jobs: housekeeper, waitress, overnight cleaner at a gym. She was polite, never missed a shift. She was what every manager dreams of. But no matter how hard she worked, she was always behind. Rent, gas, school clothes. One day, something snapped. Her youngest got sick. She had to miss 1 night of work, just 1, and they fired her. No sympathy, no thank you, just a final paycheck and silence. A week later, she started her own cleaning service. She printed flyers, knocked on doors, started small. By year 3, she had 3 vans, 10 employees, and clients lining up. I asked her once what changed. She said, I stopped trying to be good and I started trying to be free. That stuck with me because it echoes what Nietzsche described as the Übermensch, the overman, the one who creates new values, who rises above the herd's morality, who doesn't wait for permission to become powerful. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're tired of waiting. Maybe you're tired of being told that if you just work harder, smile more, suffer longer, it will all pay off. Maybe you're ready to stop surviving and start commanding. If that's true, you're not alone. This channel exists for people like you, people waking up, people questioning, people ready to step off the treadmill. So if you haven't already, subscribe, not just to follow content, but to join a movement of people who are done playing the role of the obedient worker. Because what we're about to uncover next is the key to rewriting the story you've been forced to live. Not everyone's ready for it, but if you are, stay with me. There comes a moment in every life when you realize no one's coming to save you. Not your boss, not your church, not your country, not even the gods you prayed to at midnight when rent was due and your child had a fever. That realization hits like cold steel. It burns, it rattles the soul. But you know what? It's also the moment you're finally free. I remember the night I reached that edge. I was alone, sitting on the floor of a motel room off Route 49. My hands were cracked, covered in grime from another day doing work that felt invisible. I had $37 to my name, a letter of termination folded in my pocket. No pension, no safety net, no applause. And in that silence, with no one watching, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because for the first time in my life, I saw the game for what it was. We're told from birth that life is fair, that there's a ladder, and if we climb long enough, if we suffer with grace, we'll reach the top. But what they don't tell you is some people weren't climbing, they were flying because they owned the ladder. And others, they were never even on it. They were buried beneath it, holding it up for everyone else. And who praises those holding the ladder? They call them noble, hardworking, selfless, and then they forget them. You see, praise is the cheapest form of payment. It keeps the gears turning while the oil runs dry. It's the reason millions grind themselves into dust, thinking they're saints when they're really just fuel. But here's the twist. You can step off the machine. You don't have to play the role. You can stop being a character in someone else's script and start being the author of your own story. That's what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the Übermensch. Not some Superman in a cape, but someone who dares to create their own values, who stops asking, what should I do? And instead asks, what do I choose to become? I want to leave you with something practical, because this isn't just philosophy, it's survival, and it's your birthright. If you want to stop being the hardest worker who earns the least, you have to understand this. 1, hard work is not value. Leverage is. Work with your hands if you must, but also work with your mind, your network, your voice. Those who control attention, capital, and narrative, they write the rules. So learn the rules, then bend them. 2, strategic kindness beats blind obedience. Be kind, but don't be a doormat. Kindness should be a choice, not a compulsion. Say no to what drains you. Say yes to what builds you, even if that means walking away from people who taught you never to walk away. 3, build something that is yours. A skill, a side business, a voice online, a product, a brand, a tool. Ownership, no matter how small, is the difference between surviving and sovereignty. 4, stop begging for fairness. Start claiming freedom. You're not a victim. You're not a pawn. You're not here to be grateful for scraps. You're here to build, to create, to rise. But only if you stop waiting for permission. Let me tell you one final story. There was a boy who grew up watching his father come home exhausted every night. The father never complained. He said, "This is what a man does." And the boy believed him. So the boy grew up and did the same, worked, obeyed, sacrificed, until one day he stood over his father's grave, realizing he'd inherited not wealth, not wisdom, but a cycle of quiet suffering. And that boy was me. I buried him too. The boy who believed suffering was virtue, that obedience was holy, that working the hardest meant winning the most. And in his place, I built something new, not perfect, not polished, but free. So now I'm asking you, what are you building? What belief needs to die so you can finally live? What old rule needs to be broken so you can finally rise? You don't have to earn your worth through pain. You don't have to wait for someone to notice your sacrifice. You don't have to stay silent just because you were taught to be good. You can walk away, you can rewrite the script, you can step off the ladder, you can fly. But only if you're brave enough to say, I will not be the fuel, I will be the fire. And if that resonates with you, subscribe, not because I need you to, but because you need to remember this moment. This is where the old story ends and the real one begins. Welcome to your freedom.